I want to open with the fundamental question, which may also be a new question to some of you if you're coming from the admin side, which is why are developers wary of MDMs? If you've not encountered this before, you're very fortunate, and I have a suspicion about why. But folks who have worked in what I like to call developer-driven companies, we're talking startups or, SaaS companies are a big proponent of this, like places where the culture is very much about developer experience, driven by developers, probably developer founders are probably very used to this idea that developers get a bit on edge if you put an MDM on their machine. And I think that comes from four places. And some of the you may have other, if you have other things that are missing here, throw them in the chat. But the first one is one about trust and privacy. So I think this is very much a gear switch. So some of you, if you work in a heavily regulated industry, we're talking banking, we're talking anything with big compliance concerns, this may be the one that's least familiar to you, because I think generally developers in that space come in with an expectation that, this stuff is being observed, that security is a focus, that compliance is a focus. They don't have the same expectations around trust and privacy as those companies I just mentioned, those developer-led companies. But both I and John, we spoke about this last week, we've both been at companies where the switch has happened, when it goes from being, that choppy startup developers rule the roost to, oh no, we've got our first, regulated customer, we've got our first government client. We now suddenly have to, start looking after this stuff. And suddenly it feels like your machine, which for a developer, lots of people in a company may view their machine as simply the thing they open Google Chrome on to get to their company's intranet and cloud services, right? But for a developer, this is a really important tool. It's something that they customize heavily. They know the in and outs of its operation. They consider it very much theirs, and they've got it set up just the way they like. And so the idea that someone else is going to be controlling that experience and is going to be observing that experience and how they use that machine can be a little bit threatening, because it's a change, because it's like, oh no, what have I done? Like, why, what has changed the expectation there? And that's not necessarily a fair reaction, right? Like, a lot of these tools offer things for the developer as well, keeping everyone safe. If you ask a developer, and this is St. John's to me last week, if you ask the developer, do you care about security? Obviously, they're going to care about security, right? Of course they do. But it's not, these things aren't forefront in mind. The way we have to think about these isn't forefront in mind for every role. So this is one thing that sets them on edge, but that we can manage with the correct solution. Performance is a really interesting one. And again, this will vary from industry, but MDMs as a piece of software, they're changing packages, they're installing stuff. One of the things we've heard developers worry about is this is a part of my machine that I don't have control of and may have unexpected effects at times I'm not expecting it. So imagine, nowadays everyone's building AI models, everyone's got these things where they're pushing even their most capable machines to the edge. They're using every scrap of RAM, they're using things, every piece of their machine that they need to perform builds or build their software. They want their performance to be working as they expect when it should expect. And they're worried that if your MDM suddenly starts doing a big update at the wrong time during a build, that could slow things down, could cause a run to fail, etc. So observability and actually understanding what's happening to the machine and when and who is doing stuff on the machine is also really important. And so performance, actually understanding how and when their machine is being used by these other services, is also a big concern. Friction is probably the most obvious one that many of you will have encountered. You want to control what packages are being installed. You want to know what's being installed and how. If someone wants a new piece of software, that's got to go through the proper checks. Developers, every project is a special snowflake. It's all got special tools, all got special dependencies. It can sometimes move really quickly. And developers want to be able to install the tools they need when they need them, and aren't always super happy about having to wait for things to be, properly vetted before they get installed. And so developers have this general concern this is going to slow them down, that having these compliance processes in place or these security checks where they have to get permission to install new tools is going to really slow their development velocity. Again, there are many of these tools, many like MDM, Fleet and Workbrew, have ways that are actually a benefit on the friction side. We can get developers running on day one with, default packages and this kind of stuff. But it's the initial reaction to hearing these tools are coming on is one of, oh no, this will add friction. And then finally, we've got obscurity. Someone else is managing your device. You don't know how, you don't know what they're doing. You don't know what policies your device is subject to. You don't know, what groups you're in necessarily. And that can make it difficult for developers to forward plan. I want to install, I know that in the coming months, we're going to be evolving this software project and we're going to be adding these dependencies following this path. how and when do I need to ask permission? What barriers am I going to run into? It's not always very clear. And so actually making your MDM setup visible to the developers so they know what restrictions are placed on their machines, or they know what they're going to have to ask for and when is really important, and kind of clearing away that fog for obscurity. So some of the reasons why I think developers are wary of MDMs.